Welcome to the Windows Computer and Technology channel, and we're going to talk about Windows 10 to extend or not to extend, and that is a question about Windows 10 and Microsoft's end of support date, which is right now stands at October 2025. So that's more than 2 years, and that means that in 2 years a lot of things can happen. Some people think that Microsoft has no choice but to extend. Some people think they won't extend. I'm pretty much part of those that think Microsoft will not extend. It will have an extension for business, paid extension for business, but it will not extend for consumers. And the reason I think that will happen is, first of all, we're now at 25% on Windows 11, sorry. And even though the number of Windows 10 is around 70%, it is getting lower now. And it had a spike at the beginning of the year, and that was due to the fact that the Windows 7 operating system, Windows 8, reached end of support, so that made a little spike. But roughly, if you look, it's been losing about 1% a month. 1% a month in 24 months, right, putting in that 2 years, is going to make Windows 11 probably close to 50% market share, at least, and maybe more. Not counting, and that's really where the equation stands. If Windows 12 comes out next year, Microsoft will for sure not extend Windows 10, because you'll have Windows 11, you'll have Windows 12, and frankly, they really don't care that you don't have a supported machine, because they want you to move on to newer technology. It's always been like that. I see people going crazy right now with that, the Windows 10 and Windows 11 minimum requirements. But that was always the case until Windows 10 arrived. If it wasn't for Windows 10 that broke a certain rule of minimum requirements, every operating system required a higher-end machine to work. So, Windows 95 to Windows 98 was a difference. Windows XP required you a much higher-end machine than Windows 98 and Windows 95. Windows Vista, and then Windows 7. Windows 7 required a much higher-end machine than Windows XP did. Only a very small subset of Windows XP machines could actually move to Windows 7. So that was always the case. What's happening right now is that people are not used to it anymore because Windows 10 broke that rule. The minimum requirements for Windows 10 weren't much more than Windows 7, and that meant a lot of Windows 7 and Windows 8 machines could just move to Windows 10. And Microsoft did that on purpose. It did that on purpose to make sure you move on. Now, come Windows 10, that's been around now for 8 years almost, Microsoft feels that it's time to move on to newer technology. And, of course, it's one way to help, the partners, but also there is at some point a need for Windows to require higher-end machines. The same happens with a Mac computer. Mac computers of 10 years ago did not work on the newest OS. They require newer machines. And it's the same, right now there's a lot of people with iPhones that are going a little nuts because a lot of iPhones will be left out of the new iOS version. So, it's the same across all technologies. And Mac is even worse because Apple makes the hardware. They want to sell the hardware. That's what's important. So they're pushing it on. It's interesting how we don't hear that much people going crazy on, I got to buy a new Mac, compared to, I got to buy a new Windows machine. So I predict that there will not be an extension. If there are, cool, because a lot of you will be on machines that maybe you want to continue move on. But once again, in 2 years, a little more than 2 years, what's going to happen is mostly machines that are extremely old are going to be there. They're going to be at the time that they need to be changed. And a lot of people say, well, that's not the way it works. And it's like, yes, it is. It's always been and will not change. People will move on to a new PC. And people thinking that they're going to go to Linux, well, if you go to Linux, you can't do anything because Linux does not work with half of what you need. And when I see somebody post to me, oh, well, you can run it, through a virtual machine. And if you have to run a virtual machine to run Windows apps, why the hell are you going to Linux? There's no logic in that. So no, there's no movement to Linux. There will never be, unless some Windows just dies tomorrow morning. And there's no movement really to Mac. It's very small, the number of people that from Windows to go to Mac. And actually, there's in that small number, there's probably as many people that move from Mac to Windows, and it's a small number also on the other side. So there's no real change in the number of PCs and stuff. So my prediction is really, because Windows 12 will be in the equation, there will be no extension. And Windows 11 will be there, will enter at some point next year and the year after some long main sequence like Windows 10 is right now. Windows 12 will be the dominant operating system. And how much of a dent will Windows 12 do? I predict one thing. There's going to be a surge in new PCs sold with Windows 12. Why? Because the negativity of Windows 11 is so high that most people in the general population only hear the negative and will be, oh, Windows 11 apparently is no good, so I'm waiting. And they're going to buy a machine with Windows 12 on it. And what's going to happen is Windows 12 might actually enjoy a pretty high, introduction rate, a pretty high market share fast, because people would have jumped over Windows 11 that they only hear bad about. But I don't think that Microsoft will extend Windows 10 at all. But if it does, well, that's good for a lot of you, but I don't think it will. If you enjoy my videos, please subscribe, give us thumbs up. Thank you for watching.